see the chat? I'm going to look there very quickly. Can everybody? Yes, Lisa says she can see it. Everybody can see it. You can hear it and see it pretty well then, okay? All right. Well, I'll move forward. So the question for us today, folks, is how would you define leadership? How would you define leadership? If you go to Google and you try to Google the term leadership, you're going to get about 500 million responses to that. And every response is going to be, it's going to fit the personality probably of the individual that quoted or made the leadership quote. Leadership is. Each one of those comments is going to be about as unique as the leader that made the comment. And while we don't have time to go through 500 million responses to the question, we're going to look at a few. We're going to look at about 10 that I've selected. And we're going to walk through those very quickly, and we're going to look at the quote itself and also the individual that made it. So we'll start working through that, and here we go. All right, there we go. My screen's working finally. This is Dwight Eisenhower, who was an American military officer and statesman. He served as the 34th president of the United States from 1953 to 1961, and during World War II. He served as Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe and achieved the 5-star rank of General of the Army. Now, that 5-star rank is no longer actually available. It was a wartime designation, and there were only a handful of people that had that, but President Eisenhower was one that did. And his quote for us is, leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. Think about that for a moment. And I want you to just kind of focus in on each one of these quotes as we work through them and focus on what's being said there and try to, just try to, in your mind, envision the thought process that went into it. Most of us have seen the life of Princess Diana in the media and many of the struggles that she had as a member of the royal family. But, she was also celebrated in the media for her unconventional approach to charity work. Her patronages initially centered on children and the elderly, but she later became known in her involvement in 2 particular campaigns. One of it involved the social attitudes towards the acceptance of AIDS patients. And then there was a campaign that was promoted through the International Red Cross for the removal of landmines. She also raised awareness and advocated for ways to help people affected with cancer and mental illness. And I really like this quote. She said, "I don't go by the rule book. I lead from the heart, not the head." And if you know anything about the history of Princess Diana, you'll know that she literally, by leading from the heart, she turned the House of Windsor upside down and literally changed the way that the royal family looks at the community. They look at their subjects, if you will, or the people of London and England, and how they respond to them. And she made a great change there, perhaps not even realizing that's what she was doing. We're moving on here, and this is iconic football coach Vince Lombardi, who was the head coach for the Green Bay Packers and also the Washington Redskins back a long time ago. This was a man ahead of his time who was not afraid to do what it took to become extraordinary in his field. He used his coaching skills to make the NFL. He made history in the NFL with his skills, and he came from a family of immigrants and worked his way to the top, confronting many obstacles along the way. And according to the New York Times, his coaching career, as well as his life off the field, was quite interesting. And it was full of powerful incidents that inspired a generation of football players. And you'll read books today that are written by players that played for Coach Lombardi, and they absolutely love this man, and they love the way that he led them. And here's his quote: "Leaders are made, and they're not born. They are made by hard effort, which is the price which all of us must pay to achieve any goal that is worthwhile." And I think anyone that has worked long enough, they understand that. And if you've been a leader long enough, you understand that there is an awful lot of hard work and a lot of an investment that goes into becoming a leader. We're moving on, and this is Michelle Obama, the former First Lady. She was an honorary guest at Oprah Winfrey's Legend Ball, paying tribute to the legends who helped pave the way for African-American women. In September 2007, 02138 magazine listed her 58th of the Harvard 100 was a list of the prior year's most influential Harvard alumni. Obama's public support grew in her early months as First Lady as she was accepted as a role model, and on her first trip abroad in April 2009, she toured a cancer ward with Sarah Brown, wife of British Prime Minister Gordon Brown. And in 2020, Obama topped Gallup's poll of the most admired women in America for the third year running. Now, in her quote, she uses a different word. She says success, but you could interpose that with leadership if you'd like and say it this way. Leadership isn't about how much money you make. Success isn't about how much money you make. It's about the difference you make in people's lives. That's a critical piece as we talk about leadership, because leadership ultimately is not about us as much as it is about the people that we have been asked to lead. Here's another great lady, Sheryl Sandberg. She's an American business executive, billionaire, and philanthropist. Sandberg is the chief operating officer of Meta Platforms and the founder of leanin.org. In June 2012, she was elected to Facebook's board of directors, becoming the first woman to serve on this board. And prior to joining Facebook as its COO, Sandberg was vice president of global online sales and operations at Google and was involved in its philanthropic arm. I trip over this word every single time. The philanthropic arm, Google.org. Before that, Sandberg served as chief of staff for United States Secretary of the Treasury, Lawrence Summers. In 2012, she was named in the Time 100 and an annual list of the most influential people in the world. Quite the resume. And she said this about leadership. Leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence. Huge statement right there. Okay, this one is going to be a little fun for us. And personally, I think this is the best quote on leadership that I have to offer. The problem is, I have no idea who George Van Valkenburg is. And when I put this together yesterday and I was talking to Janae about it, I said, this is the funniest thing I have ever run across, because if you Google this quote, you'll find all over the web, and it'll always be attributed to George Van Valkenburg. But beyond that, there's absolutely no information about who this guy is. I can't tell you if he was a captain of industry. I can't tell you if he was a great leader of business. I can't tell you if he was a politician or if he was a religious leader. I can't tell you anything about it. There's nothing out there to suggest that, be honest with you, that whether or not this guy, what he did or who he was, or even if he existed, but for whatever reason, this particular leadership quote, which I love it, is attributed to a man that is an enigma, if you will. He's unknown. And quite frankly, it seems like he's a guy that walked out on the street corner one day and suddenly had an epiphany and said, leadership is doing what is right when no one else is watching. Well, maybe no one else was watching, George, because nobody knows who you are. And I'm not quite sure the picture is even accurate, because there was a different picture that was attached to this quote on Google, but that guy's name was Robert Van Valkenburg. So don't ask me why. I thought this would be a funny little piece that we could add in here. But the quote itself is what matters. And it's leadership is doing what is right when no one else is watching. I really want you to think about that one, because as we get into our discussion today, a lot of what we say is going to center on that very idea right there. And it has to do with personal integrity. So I want you to really be thinking about that one. Of course, this is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a Baptist minister and activist who became the most visible spokesman and leader in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968. King advanced civil rights for people of color in the United States through nonviolence and civil disobedience. On October 14, 1964, Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize for combating racial inequality through nonviolent resistance. King was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freeman in 1977 and the Congressional Gold Medal in 2003. And here's his quote: "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." A very true statement about leadership. John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, 35th President of the United States from 1961 until his assassination near the end of his third year in office. Kennedy served at the height of the Cold War and the majority of his work as president concerned relations with the Soviet Union and Cuba. This man was 44 years old when he was elected president, one of the youngest men to ever be elected to the nation's highest office. And he gives us a very, very strong quote that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. In order to be a leader, you've got to continue to be a learner. And only learners are the ones that can actually lead, because they're willing to grow. They're willing to expand their own base of knowledge. And that's going to be important. And it will be important as we have this discussion this afternoon. Oprah Winfrey was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. She's won many accolades throughout her career, which include 18 Daytime Emmy Awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award and the Chairman's Award, 2 Primetime Emmy Awards, including the Bob Hope Humanitarian Award, the Tony Award, a Peabody Award, and the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award, awarded by the Academy Awards, and 2 additional Academy Award nominations. Winfrey was elected as a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2021. We all know who Oprah is. We've all seen what Oprah has been able to do in her community and, quite frankly, the world at large. And her quote is wonderful. Leadership is about empathy. Please remember that term today, empathy. It's about having the ability to relate and connect with people for the purpose of inspiring and empowering their lives. And what you'll find out is through these quotes, a lot of the things that we'll talk about today will include a number of the things we're learning through these quotes. So here's our final one. This is the 10th one on the list, by Dr. Myles Munroe. He was a Bahamian evangelist and ordained minister, author, speaker, and leadership consultant who founded and led the Bahamas Faith Ministries International and Myles Munroe International. He was chief executive officer and chairman of the board of the International Third World Leaders Association and president of the International Leadership Training Institute, as well as the author of numerous books. And here's the quote, and this is the quote that we're going to kind of camp on today. Leadership is the capacity to influence others through inspiration motivated by passion, generated by vision, produced by a conviction, and ignited by a purpose. And what's the key word in there for us today? Well, it's the word influence. Leadership is influence. So that's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about influence in leadership and how important this is for us moving forward. I like the quote from Dr. Munroe because no matter what position you hold, whether a director, administrator, team leader, I believe that leadership is best defined by this one word right here, and that's influence. So what is influence? Influence is the capacity to have the effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something. The capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something. Now, the word influence comes from 2 medieval words, Latin words that is, influentia. Now you see influential on the screen. That's my bad right there. That's a typo. But it should say influentia, which means inflow, and influere meaning to flow into. So the idea of influence gives us this idea of flowing into a situation, or in this case, as we're talking about today, possibly people's lives. Now, I like object lessons. I like object examples, and I'm going to use one here. Now, what you're looking at on the screen looks like a bottle of just, regular everyday baby powder or talcum powder. Actually, I want to talk to you about talcum powder. Now, okay, Jackson, where are you going with this? Why would you show us talcum powder? Well, as we all know, talcum powder has a number of different uses, and it can be applied in a number of different ways. And it's a very useful piece of your household for different items. What I found out, and I didn't know this until I really looked into it, was that talcum powder can be used on your sheets, believe it or not, to keep your bed cool in the summertime. Apparently that used to be a thing with talcum powder. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because talcum powder, the talc itself is actually one of the finest particles that is known to man. And it has this ability, when it's applied in certain ways, to invade into places or to flow into places that other things might not be able to, where other things are a little bit more coarse and not quite as smooth, talc can get into those places and it can bring a cooling, soothing effect to whatever the situation is. As a matter of fact, you'll find out that talc is used in the medical field as an adhesive in certain operations where it has to do with people's lungs. If their lungs have collapsed, there's a way to insert talc in there, and it gets around the walls of the lungs. And actually, as the lungs expand with air, they can adhere to the rib cage. And so the person can breathe again. Talc has this ability to flow into, but also to kind of stick around and continue to affect what it needs to affect in the situation that it's applied in. This is what influence does. You know, and some of the synonyms for this word are affect, impact, direct, guide, model for, and inspire to. So we're going to talk about influence today, but the big question is, why is influence important to us as leaders? Well, first of all, as we look at this, it has to do with integrity, folks. You know, Van Valkenburg's quote speaks directly to this idea. Who are we when no one is looking? See, a leader seeks to build relationships on trust. You must commit yourself to developing strong character. Basically, the question that's being asked here is, who are we when no one else is around? Are you the same person? Am I the same person at work that I am at home? If my team here at WCIF were to talk to my wife and they begin to interact and they got a chance to at the board meeting back in March, is she going to tell them that, hey, the old boy is the same way at home that he is at work? I would hope so, because that means that there's integrity at work in my life, and I can build relationships on that. You have to build relationships on that kind of trust, and you have to build it on that kind of integrity. Who are you when no one else sees you? See, you can bend your actions to conform to your principles, or you can go the other direction. You can bend your principles to conform to your actions. And my hope would be that we would avoid the latter. Now, let's be realistic here. A lot of you out there, whatever the organization is that you're working in, some of you work with counties, some of you are working with nonprofits, but we all realize that for a lot of us, we operate within a political realm. And more times than not, it's sad to say, we see that there are people in there that are bending their principles to conform to their actions, because ultimately the ends justify the means. But I want to tell you something. It's not supposed to work that way. Our actions should reflect our principles. And sometimes that gets us in trouble simply because when you're that honest, there are going to be some people that don't want to see that. But when you're leading people, that's exactly what your team wants to see. Are you a person of integrity? Can I trust you? Can I trust you not only to lead, but to be someone that I can lean on? Do you have the character that makes me want to aspire to make myself better? It's been said that character is made in the small moments of our lives. And so you'll notice that we're going to do an acrostic here for influence. And this is the first letter. It's the letter I, and it has to do with integrity. You know, it's the small moments, folks, that matter. Next piece we want to look at is nurture. Leaders, guys, I can't emphasize this enough. Leaders need to take an interest in the lives of those who work with us. Okay. I need to be genuinely concerned for others and be focused on their growth and development. One of the things that I think we should do as leaders is concentrate on knowing the skill sets of the people that work with us and find creative ways of utilizing those things. Now, I'm going to harken back to Andy Core here for a moment. He talked about this morning about serving and not shining. And I really appreciated that whole thought process, because it actually aids in what we're talking about today, that we're servants. Leaders are servants. You've heard maybe have heard a lot of conversation about being a servant leader. A leader is only as good as the people around them. And because of that, a leader needs to be able to serve the people that work with him by finding out what their skill sets are and nurturing those things along and giving them opportunities. We'll talk about empowering here in a little bit, but giving them those opportunities to help them grow and develop. Because ultimately, as a leader, you'll hear me say this once, and I may say it again as we get through the presentation, that leaders should always be looking for the next generation of leaders to come in behind them. And that's a hard concept, because a lot of times we get into these leadership positions and think, I've arrived, I'm it, this is the way things are going to be. And guess what? If it all ends with me, and if it all ends with you, think about this, we're all in deep weeds. We need to nurture the people that are working with us, to look for those skill sets that can be developed, so that can become a leader. That person can become a leader themselves and possibly be the next person that steps up to do perhaps what you're doing. Nothing wrong with that. And we should be trying to identify those things. And then the third point is faith. Leaders believe in the people that they work with. This is a little bit of work. Having faith in people is really a scarce commodity today. I think we all understand that. You know, we've all had situations where people either lied to us, or they betrayed us, or could be any number of things. They've said things about us, they've slandered us to other people, and that breaks faith, right? Sure. It's a hard concept. But when you look at leadership, what I want you to understand is that the idea here is not to persuade people to think more highly of you. We all understand as leaders that there's stuff that goes with it. That's just part of it. That's the territory we're living in, right? But the idea behind believing in people that you work with is to persuade them to think more highly of themselves. In other words, you want to believe that there's a better version of that individual that you're working with, and it's your job to believe in them, to go back and nurture them, focus on helping them to develop. You believe in the people that work with you. And someone made the comment one time that we all live under the same sky, but we don't all have the same horizon. Now think about that for a minute. You know, in the leadership world, what we see is a flow chart, which usually starts from top to bottom. We all understand that. You know, here's the guy up at the top. He's the decision maker. He's the one responsible, and everything else flows downhill. But what our culture is calling for now is more of a horizontal kind of flow chart, where, yep, you've got the guy that's in charge. He's still the guy that's making decisions. But if he places everybody, if the leader places everybody else on the same plane, and it creates a teamwork type atmosphere where everybody's strengths are dependent upon, so the leader can make the best possible decisions he can make. You see, no leader is an island unto themselves, and they can't be. They have to exercise faith in the people that they have working for them. And so if you've got this horizontal relationship with people, that means that everybody gets to make a contribution. Everybody's strengths come forward, and they get to participate in what will move your situation forward, whether you're working in a nonprofit. And I believe this can happen in government. I believe in the government situation, that you can change the culture so that you are bringing along leaders who all have an impact on what happens as you move forward. So believing in your people is critical. You have to have faith. You have to have faith in your folks. Now, this one is a monster topic right here. Listening. Listening values what others have to say. Listening is wanting to hear. How many of you have ever had a situation where you walked into the office to talk to the boss, the director, the admin, whoever it might be? You had an issue. You had something that had to be dealt with, and you really needed to talk to them, and you needed them to hear what you had to say. And the whole time that you were in the office with them, they're tapping away on an email, and they're looking at their computer screen, and they kind of give you a nod, and then they're going about their business. They're not listening. And you know they're not listening. See, when we don't pay attention to what others have to say, we're often sending a message, albeit unintended, that we're not really interested in what they have to say. Dale Carnegie, who was the author of a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, states that you can make more friends in 2 weeks by becoming a good listener than in 2 years trying to get other people interested in you. Just by being a good listener. I used to hear of people that I had great respect for when other people would talk about them, and they would say, you know what, he takes an interest in people's lives. He listens to other people. This is where we set aside all of our self-interest and become more interested in what is going on with other people, and especially the people we work with, listening to them. And I'm going to tell you what, this is a tough one, because you don't learn this one overnight. This takes a lifetime to learn. This is something that I'm continuing to learn now, because I'm one of those guys that starts multitasking, and then somebody will walk through the door and, hey, I've got some information for you. And I'm sitting there and I haven't said anything, and I'm tapping away because this email is critical and I've got to get it out. And I look at it and I've learned to do this. I'm listening to you, but I'm still working. Okay. And am I really listening though? That's really the question. And so I'm working on that as well. It's not something I have mastered, I promise you. I work hard at this because it takes a lifetime to become a good listener. And see, listening means that you're not only interested in what the person is saying, you're also interested in that person. You're interested in who they are, where they've been, what they do, what they've done, which will also lead you to an understanding of how that person thinks, how they feel, what makes them passionate. See, if you understand that about your team members, it makes you better equipped as a leader to give direction, because you're playing to their strengths. Any good team, any good sports team is going to do that. They're going to bring in top quality athletes, and they're going to play to their strengths. And it's the same principle that we use when we lead people in whatever organization we're in. We play to their strengths. So I want to challenge you with a little exercise right now. And, I can't read chats from where I'm sitting. So, you can send a chat if you want to, or just think about this. But I want you to think about somebody that's inside your organization right this minute. Someone that you know, someone you worked with for, say, whether it's been 6 months or a year or whatever the time length, it could be 10 years. I want you to think about that one individual that you communicate with on a daily basis. And I want you to think about, do you know anything about them outside of the workday? Yeah. Do you know anything about them? What motivates them? What their passions are? Just the things that they like to do? Do you know anything about them? Have you taken time to talk to them enough and learn to listen and start asking some of those questions like, hey, we all ask each other what we did on the weekend, and most of us will have a pretty straight up answer. Well, I worked in the yard, which is usually my answer because I usually am. I worked in the yard, we grilled out, that sort of thing like that. I'm kind of crazy, by the way, when it comes to grilling. I'll grill in the dead of wintertime. I don't care if it's snow on the ground. I'm firing the grill up and throwing some meat on it, by golly. But we all have our answers. We all have our, answers about what we did, or we went someplace, or we participated in something. Sometimes those things that you ask, those questions you ask, will tell you a lot about the person that you've been working with all this time. Now, I'm going to throw an example out there. Lisa Sabai is one of our great sales reps here. She's amazing. She does great work. She's very diligent and she's very on it. She looks at the numbers in a way that I can't even possibly begin to look at. And so we're really grateful that she's a part of our team. But I found out something about Lisa just in a casual conversation. She likes to stamp. Now, for those of you that might not know what that is, some of you probably will know what it is, but for those of you that don't, stamping is involving creating a greeting cards and all kinds of different other things, but greeting cards are the things that stand out to me. Well, guess what? My wife is a stamper, and she has got buku stuff shoved back in what she calls her stamping room. Now, between you and me, it's really the catch-all in our house, but it's just loaded with all these rubber stamps and all these things and all this ink and paper. And I have begged her, let's sell the stuff, let's move it on. No, I'll never get rid of that stuff. But I found out Lisa does the same thing. And guess what? Because my wife does it, and quite frankly, the two of them connected on this when we went to the board meeting in March, I learned a little something about her. She's creative. She's creative. She cares about friends. She has close friends that she deeply cares about, and she loves on those people, and she goes to see them. That tells me a lot about who Lisa Sabai is. This is a practice that I want to encourage everyone that's listening to this today to begin to work on, because if you can become a good listener and you can show an interest in other people's lives, I'm going to tell you something. As a leader, they will run through a brick wall for you. Okay? You learn something about them, you understand their skill sets, you understand what motivates them, and you can be a hero, but you can also help push them in a direction that's going to help them develop their leadership skills. And you get to understand them, which happens to be our next point in our slide, understanding. Understanding is the ability to understand people with the potential to impact every aspect of your life, and especially your ability to communicate with others. You can see from their point of view. You get to see life through a different set of eyes. Now, self-centeredness, which is often the key stumbling block to understanding others, is simply the tendency of people to put their own self-interests first. And we talked about this, a moment ago, going back to Andy Core again. Are we going to serve, or are we going to shine? Self-centeredness will keep you from understanding the potential that's in other people. But not only that, it'll prevent you from understanding on a different level yourself. Because if you'll notice something as we talk about these leadership principles, this isn't just about something that you as a leader will do for someone else. This is intended to help you grow in your personal journey of leadership as well. This is a critical one. The key antidote for self-centeredness is to strive to see things from the other's perspective. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Understanding others actually frees us as leaders. It frees us up. And to help you understand that, when we see things from their perspective, it allows us to make decisions utilizing their particular skill set. Now, that frees us from a lot of worry and angst and wondering what's my next move and how can we've got this problem and I don't have the skill set to fix this. Well, guess what? You've got this individual here working for you that does have a skill set, and they can see it a certain way, and they can see a clear path to fixing a problem or meeting a goal or whatever it is that you're dealing with. They can show you a clear path to get there by understanding. It frees us up. I think of a classic example is Coach Bill Belichick. And as I warned you previously, yes, I'm going to throw a few football analogies in here. But Bill Belichick, the head coach of the New England Patriots, we all know who Tom Brady is. He's won a gazillion Super Bowls. He's got no more fingers for the rings and all that kind of stuff. Bill Belichick is one of the most beloved coaches. Now, it's hard for me to imagine that because Belichick is emotionless. He's got this, he rarely smiles. He wears a goofy looking wardrobe that requires him to put on a sweatshirt and cut the arms off. I don't get it. But people that work for Bill Belichick praise him and they love him. And that coaching tree from Belichick all through the NFL is felt. And the reason is because Bill Belichick lets his coaches coach. He'll go up to his offensive coordinator and say, listen, I think we need to run this offensive play, and this is what it's going to look like, and here's how you call it out, and here's where you position everybody. Let's run that play, and I believe it'll work. And a good offensive coordinator is going to take a look at it and say, okay, coach, we'll see what we can do. And they take a look at the play and they figure, wait a minute, if we put the tight end on this end rather than on this end, this play is not going anywhere because the defensive end is going to read that immediately and he's going to sack the quarterback. Now, please don't read anything into my explanation of X's and O's because I really don't know that much. I just know I love the game. But the point being is that offensive coordinator will go back to Coach Belichick and say, Coach, I think this is a great play, but if we move the tight end over to this side, that play will be successful. If you leave him on this side, quarterback's getting sacked. And what Belichick does routinely is say, you know what? That is a great idea. Let's go with your idea. He empowers his coaches because he understands what they're trying to tell him, and it helps him to get to a better outcome because he's listening to them. And if you understand what motivates your team, you can create a culture that breeds success. And understanding also helps you to identify the skill sets of the people who work for you. Now, you've all been looking at this screen and you've seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And you're looking at me going, Jackson, what the heck? Why are we even looking at this? Well, I want to show this to you real quick, and I'm going to play this, and I just want you to watch it, and then I'll tell you a little bit about it afterwards, okay? So here we go. That's amazing, right? Isn't that cool? Now, why am I showing that to you? Well, if you're looking at the screen, you see Shauna Zuzi Cobb. Shauna did this as I believe, a requirement for a college course. She took basically a 1 minute, 8 second intro to one of her favorite shows, by the way, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She completely redid it. Now, for 1 minute and 8 seconds, that's a lot. You know, it looks like, well, that was great, and it looked like it was fairly simple. No, it was anything but simple. It was complicated because I've seen what she did to get to that. I've seen it on her website. There's an explanation of everything that she went through to pull that together. But because she is so passionate about graphic arts and graphic arts design, we've identified that here at WCIF, and she was promoted back when I got here to graphic design wellness coordinator. And we're relaunching our website, which we talked to you about just a little bit, and Shauna's going to be in charge of the website because we can handle in-house any changes that we need to make on a moment's notice. We don't have to wait for the company that's hosting our site to take care of those things for us because we have Shauna, who has got this tremendous ability. But I wouldn't have known this unless I asked a few questions and I did a little research. I also found out, and hopefully Shauna, I don't embarrass you, but did you know that Shauna was one time a championship ice skater and actually had the ability to head for the Olympics? Yeah, pretty crazy, right? This is the kind of team that we have here at WCIF, and I'm really proud to highlight these things about our folks, because one of my ultimate goals here is to create a culture where everyone matters. A team, folks, is only as good as its members. There are no big I's and little U's. Everyone possesses strengths and weaknesses. And so we draw on our strengths and we deal with our weaknesses. But the beauty of teamwork is that no one member has the capacity to fill every need because everyone matters. Everyone gets to contribute. Where I might be strong in an area and weak in another, Shauna can pick that up because she's strong in the area that I'm weak in. I couldn't do any of this. There's no way I could put this all together. I'd like to think I could, but I'd screw it up quick, fast, in a hurry, I promise you. But because I'm weak in that area, Shauna's able to pick that up and move it forward. Everyone's ideas and thought processes have value. So if you want to be successful as a team leader or as an administrator or a director, you got to remember that you will only go as far as your team will take you. All right. And where they take you is entirely up to you. So let's move on. I'm running out of time. The next one is enlarging. Hey, help others become bigger. Always strive to help others be the best version of themselves. Always strive to help others be the best version of themselves. Come alongside your team members and take an interest in their lives. Do you see a thread that's running through all of this? Yeah, there's a definite thread running through this. When you know what motivates and inspires them, you enlarge them by encouraging them to strive for something more. So how do we do that? Well, it starts with us. We have to enlarge ourselves. If you want to do more for others, you have to become more developed yourself. I'm reading a couple of books right now on workplace culture. Both of them really good. One of them comes from the perspective of a company that's got it going on. And the other comes from a perspective of a company where someone walked in and tried to establish that and really ran into roadblocks. But both of these books are going to give me a better foundation for what it means to have the kind of culture we're trying to establish. And I believe it's going to be helpful to us. I really do in the long run. See, always be learning to make yourself the best version of yourself. Always be learning. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Everybody sets goals. Everybody has plans. Everybody has something they want to achieve. But if you only set goals that you can achieve, I'm going to tell you, you've probably already failed. Yeah. Reach for the impossible. Now, you may come back and say, all right, Jackson, I mean, we need to set reasonable goals, because we have limited budgets and we have all this other stuff going on and we've got to get it to put it to a vote and we got this and I get that. I get all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in order to enlarge you want to enlarge your capacity to do more. You want to enlarge your footprint or whatever it is you want to enlarge. There will be ways to do it. Set those goals for yourself. Don't set the goals that, yeah, we'll hit that goal, no big deal. Yeah, we had a great year. No, because then you become status quo. And who wants to deal with that? That's no way to grow. So enlarging involves getting your folks to be the best version of themselves, but also getting you to be the best version of yourself. Set those goals high, and you might find out that you may hit a few of them, which would be pretty amazing. This next one is a critical one as well. It's navigating. Navigating. What do we mean? We assist others through difficult circumstances. See, the reality is that no matter how much you help people enlarge themselves and develop their potential, they're still going to face obstacles and problems in their personal and professional lives. I come from an era, I'm a little older than probably most of you on this call. And I remember being taught as a young man coming up, you never take your personal problems to work. Nope, you leave them at home. You don't have an issue. You don't take your issues to work. Well, obviously we all know that that's easier said than done, because whatever is affecting you emotionally is going to affect you no matter where you are, whether you're at home or whether you're on the job. And leaders have learned over the course of time that they need to be, at times, an individual that helps one of their team members to navigate those difficult circumstances. You got to remember never to let a goal become more important than the lives of those who work with you. Be empathetic. You've got to be empathetic. You've got to understand where people are coming from. They need to know that not only do you have faith in them, but you're empathetic when they go and deal with those situations of life, which they all have. And I'll also give you another thing that I've learned over the course of my life is don't try to tell anyone you understand what they're dealing with if you really don't know, okay? Here's the problem. What we find ourselves always falling into, somebody's had something happen in their life and it's tragic and it's terrible and it has really changed the trajectory of their life and they don't know what's going to happen next. And the worst thing, or the worst thing we could possibly do is go in and try to tell them we know how they feel when we really don't. What I found out is when I've had a friend or a family member, even a coworker, that's going through a really difficult time and a challenge, and there just doesn't seem to be answers, I don't try to give them an answer because I really don't have one. A lot of times it's just about empathy. I see where you are. I'm here for you. That's it. That's it. Now in the job place, obviously, you got to navigate through those things, right? You got to navigate people through those. Because while you need their productivity, you need to let them know that, hey, I get it. It's tough. It's hard. What can we do to help you get through this difficult circumstance? You see, your team needs you to be more than just the captain of the ship, everybody. They need you to be the rudder, guiding them through rough waters. Give you a quick story. Before I moved to Washington, I was married to a wonderful woman. Her name was Sherry. We were married for 18 years. The year after we got married, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And this was back in 1988. And so cancer treatments were not near as advanced as they are in 2022. And for the better part of our married life, 18 years off and on, we dealt with her cancer. And cancer is not fun. And anyone out there that's dealt with it and they understand it, either they've gone through it themselves or they have a family member that's gone through it, you know, it's pretty rugged stuff. From operations to chemotherapy to treat all the other treatments, that sort of thing, stem cell replacement. We went through the gamut together. And in 2006, her body gave out and she passed away. But we had a great life. I don't ever want to minimize that. For 18 years, we were great together. We raised a son together. We watched him get to college, and she was actually able to attend his wedding. And her time came. And I'm going to tell you that the grieving process for that I went through was a 2-year period, and it was harsh and it was horrible. But I'm one of these kind of guys that I'm looking at a problem ahead of me, I'm going to go through it because I'm a little bit tenacious in that way. I'm not going to skirt an issue. I'm going to try to go through it. And if it's the same old thing with guys. We want to fix everything, but there's nothing fixing this. I just knew I needed to go through it because I wanted to get through it and be healthy and whole on the other side of it. And so I did. It was a 2-year process, and it was crazy. There are 5 stages of grief. Okay, they all come about. They don't all come about at the same in the way that you might read them in a book because they're different for everybody. But I went through all 5 of them until I got to the last one, which was, this is my new normal, and this is how life is going to be. And so when I moved out to Washington 14 years ago, I met Carla. And we've been together, we'll be together 13 years in June. And it's been amazing and it's been wonderful. But I was ready to move on by that time because I had gone through the process. Well, what am I trying to tell you? I have worked with people that have lost spouses because I know what it feels like. I know what that is, especially if they had a good marriage, especially if they were snatched out of their lives, or especially if they'd gone through an extended illness or something like that. I'm able to walk alongside a spouse, for the most part, men who lose wives, and understand, and not only be empathetic, but be sympathetic, because I truly do know what they're going through. But I don't come in with a lot of platitudes or anything like that. I just simply let them know, hey man, I'm here. I'm here. I've been through this. I get it. I know what you're dealing with, and I'm here. You have questions, I'll try to answer them, but I don't give them a whole lot of stuff. I just let them know that I'm there. And that's the critical piece of navigating through these relationships with people. I've got to hurry here. I'm running out of time. Our next one, very quickly, because we want to get through the acrostic, is connecting. You need to initiate positive relationships. Connecting is about opening a channel of communication by paying attention to what people value and need. You got to communicate. Understanding and, more importantly, accepting what people value and need is a prerequisite for developing and a make a difference mindset. See, anytime you don't believe you can make a difference, I'm going to tell you right now, you won't. Communication skills, a desire to help people change and grow, and a sense of purpose provide the foundation for initiating and, most importantly, sustaining positive relationships. You've got to be willing to get out there and connect. You can't be an island unto yourself. You've got to be able to connect with people. Okay? And the last one here is empowering. This is the one we've been kind of leading up to, isn't it? Give your team members the power to lead. Okay? The ability to empower others is one of the keys to personal and professional success. Empowering is giving your influence, there's that word again, to others for the purpose of personal and organizational growth. It's seeing people's potential, sharing your resources with them, and showing them that you believe in them completely. Now, this is a test of who you are. This will be a test of every leader out there. Are you willing to empower people with the influence that you possess? Think about that. For their own personal growth, and also for the growth of the organization. Because that means placing enough faith in them to know you're going to go out there, you're going to fall on your face, you're going to screw it up. I'm going to be there to pick you up. We're going to get you back on the path, and you're going to go along. And guess what? You're going to fall over again. You're going to screw it up. We're going to pick you up, and there's a risk involved in empowering people. But if you make the investment in the other ways we've been talking about, you're helping them to enlarge and become the best version of themselves. You've got to be able to trust that when you empower them with your influence, that they'll be able to navigate that thing through, and you'll be there to help them. You'll be there to catch them. J. Paul Getty once said, it doesn't make much difference how much knowledge or experience an executive possesses. If they are unable to achieve results through people, they are worthless as an executive. In other words, you're only as good as the people around you. Always. I'm a musician. I have been for a long time. I picked up my first guitar when I was 14 years old, learned how to play it. And over the years, in church, I was a song leader, and they'd ask me to lead a service, and I'd get up and I could play, and I could chord charts, and I could sing, and all those things like that. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a subpar guitar player. And if everybody expected me to carry the whole thing, they were in trouble. And I've had to do that a few times. It's like, give me a pianist, give me another guitar player, give me a bass player, give me a drummer, and make sure they're better musicians than I am. Because I can lead in that situation, but I need those people to make me look better, or to help me to grow. And by bringing in people that are better than I am at those particular things, it helped me to grow as a musician. Musicians all tend to be a little flaky, and I know this because I am one, but that's the way. If you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that's good leadership principle. Because if it all ends with you or me, folks, we're kind of in deep weeds. You're only as good as the people that you surround yourself with. So here's our final thought. You want to reproduce others who can influence their team. Reproducing other people who can influence people is based on the power of multiplication rather than maintenance. Leaders in maintenance mode focus on not losing ground rather than making progress. If you just maintain, you become status quo. You've got to multiply leaders within your organization. To make a difference, you must strive to become a multiplier who moves beyond synergy to significance. And at that level, leaders develop and reproduce leaders who stay with the organization, work to reach their potential, and in turn, they develop other leaders. I want to encourage you today as we close this out. And if you have any questions or comments, if you want to put them in the chat, I may not be able to get to them right away, but I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can answer, or we'll look for your comments a little bit later. But I want to encourage everybody today, enlarge yourself, become the best version of yourself. That way you can lead others to become the best version of themselves. And what you'll have is an amazing team that will go the places that you need to go. You can achieve the goals, even the impossible goals. You might hit a few of those that you want to achieve, and your organization will be healthier, it'll be stronger, and it'll be more viable as we move into the future. So I want to say again, thank you for coming to our benefit summit, and we wish you nothing but great success in your growth as a leader. And Janae, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Bobby. Thank you so